You guys ask us about long-term reviews, and we have a big one, a doozy for you, because this is 3+ years of ownership of a 2020 Ford F-250 we used to call Super Tremor. And I have the new owner of that truck, Warren, joining me.
Hello.
Hey, dude, thanks for joining this call. You are where? Are you in Seattle area?
Yeah, I'm right in Seattle.
Okay, so a little backstory first. TFL Studios, TFL Truck, we purchased a 2020 Ford F-250 with a big 7.3-liter gas V8 engine and a new transmission, which is the 10-speed heavy-duty transmission in this Ford. We bought that truck for a long-term review test, and we usually keep our trucks about a year. And we bought that truck originally because it was a brand new powertrain, and we really wanted to test it out, live with it, and do everything possible. Then we also gave it a suspension lift, bigger tires, and we called it Super Tremor. Then, when we were done with it, we sold it. And Warren, you picked it up.
Indeed, I did. Yeah, I was very happy to buy it at the time.
So tell me first, why this F-250 kind of drew your attention? Why did you buy this?
Sure. So I was in a 2014 F-150 before with an EcoBoost, and I think I forget what they had, like a 6 or 7-speed automatic. I liked that, but I was looking for more performance off-road. It had a stock suspension, and as I started researching that, I realized it would cut my payload too much, and I really needed every bit of payload that truck had. And then I started following this series as you guys were building the truck, and I started thinking, like, actually, this is kind of the direction I would go. And I started out looking at F-250s and pricing out a Carli lift and stuff like that. And then when I heard you guys were auctioning it off, I was like, oh, this would be perfect. I don't have to do any of that work. I can just buy it ready made.
Okay, yeah. So we went to Carli. So Carli is a Southern California company, a suspension company, and they've been working on heavy duty trucks, gosh, for a couple of decades, maybe more. And those trucks are really, they tuned with King shocks. It's kind of tuned a little bit more for higher speed. And it sounds like, so what do you use the truck for? Are you using it for higher speed?
Yeah, indeed. I don't do that much kind of like pure recreational off-roading. I mostly use it for hunting and a little bit of fishing, and then like a little bit of camping and stuff like that with the family. And I want to be able to kind of cover ground on the forestry roads and off-road and stuff like that pretty quickly, because some of the places I get into, I hunt as a day trip or as an overnighter, and there can be 30 or 40 miles of off-road. And so if you're doing it at like 5-10 miles an hour, it takes a long time to get in there.
Yeah.
But if you can do it at like 25, 30, sometimes 40 miles an hour, it's like you can do things that in a day
Yeah.
that previously you'd have to commit a weekend to make it worthwhile to get into.
So, I mean, you're using it for a purpose. So it's a very specific purpose. That's cool. And you're in your garage, and the truck is just outside. So
Yep.
let's take
Yep.
this out, the camera out, and kind of walk around the truck together. And I want to, first of all, you purchased it with how many miles?
So I think it was like 11 or 12,000 miles, maybe just short of 12,000 miles. It's got 48,000 miles on it now. I don't commute. Um, so 100% personal use miles. How's the internet connection, by the way? Is this holding up?
It's holding up a little bit, but the further you walk away,
Okay,
a little bit more choppy it is.
sure. All right.
So if you can just show maybe kind of the suspension and tires, and then we can look at your overland build.
Sure. Yeah, so it still running. Obviously, I'm not sure if you can see it with the lighting. The Carli pin top suspension. I still have the 37-inch Falcon Wild Peaks and the wheels that you guys put on it. I really like these tires a lot. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we use the tires like kind of every facet of them. There's a lot of winter driving as we go up and over the mountains, so icy, snowy roads. There's muddy off-roading. There's a lot of rock off-roading, and then we get a ton of rain and very slippery roads here in Seattle, and they hold up really well across all those conditions. I've been super happy with them. And one thing I didn't appreciate before driving this truck is the value of having a 37-inch tire. Being able to like air it down a little bit off road just makes such a tremendous difference to comfort. The small bump compliance, like you know, on the road, I run these at about 45 psi, and if I bring them down to like anywhere from 28 to 22 off road, 28 if I'm going a little faster, probably. It just makes such a difference. It's like driving a Cadillac almost across some of the forestry roads.
And can you show me the front bumper? Because that's
Sure.
really quickly.
Yeah, so one of the few kind of mods to the actual truck that I've done is I added the uh, winch that's off the tremor. So this is like, you know, it's built by Warren, but it's like a Ford part, and it comes with all the bracketry and whatnot, so you can keep your factory bumper. I didn't like the looks of a lot of the aftermarket bumpers, and I didn't really feel the need to replace the bumper. So it's, you know, an extra $2,000 or something that I didn't need to spend. And you could just basically buy the winch and you have a really kind of clean look. The one modification I did make is I just cut the loop off the end. So I have a completely metal free winching setup, closed loop, so I can use soft shackles and whatnot. That works out really well. And then one of the other things that I did was replace the headlights. So these are the Morimoto headlights, and that makes such a tremendous difference. The Ford halogen lights, the housings just can't control the light that well, and especially living in the city as like a reasonable member of society with a lifted truck, it's really, you either have to point your headlights right down at the ground with those halogens, or you blind everyone on the street. So
So,
those have worked really well for me.
so this truck is pretty tall because it has a suspension lift with about 3 inches and also larger tires. So this truck is tall.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 6'1", and it like that's the bed rail right there. It's up there.
So, and I'm glad actually you did the winch. Originally, when we had the truck, Ford announced a factory accessory winch, but it was first unavailable for a little while, and then we kind of never were able to get it. And I'm
Yep.
really happy that you were able to incorporate it and actually have kind of a holistic approach to it, right? And actually get it built.
Mhm.
So before we talk about your powertrain, because I think people want to know about how's the engine and transmission,
Yep.
let's take a look a little bit about your camping setup and go
Sure.
from there.
So I'll just walk away from it so I can get it in the frame. So this is a pop-up topper from a company called AT Overland. They're based out of Arizona. Um, it's similar, I think, to the topper that you guys had in that it's a parallel pop-up, which I really like. There's a lot of wedge style toppers on the market, which are probably fine, and they're a little more simple. The one thing I like about this is I'm often not making really elaborate campsites. I'm driving into some place at like in the dark at night. I throw it up, I hop in it, and then I'm waking up at dark 30 in the morning as well. And so I try and get the truck as level as I can, but sometimes it's a little nose down, sometimes it's a little tailgate down. And so to be able to sleep with your head on either end and to kind of move around to level out once you're in there is huge. And then just having the extra headroom throughout the length of the bed. It's pretty easy to pop up. It's really well built. It's made out of pretty heavy gauge aluminum, and then they have like a honeycomb composite on the inside to add extra stiffness, and it also helps insulate the topper quite a bit. And I use this, you know, more in the winter than I do in the kind of heat of the summer, so that R value kind of really helps.
That's cool. And like you said, in the mountain regions, it can get cold and snowy.
Yep,
And,
exactly.
and we have a couple of pictures of you, I think, cutting through some snow.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
Driving. Yeah. Can you tell me about one of those trips? I mean, what is it like?
Yeah, well, I'm amazed actually at how much flotation you can get with such a heavy truck. Realistically, when I have it all loaded up, I'm probably around 9,500 pounds when I'm going out for the weekend. Um, and when I really air down the tires, I've gone as low as 16 psi in the snow, which is a little bit dangerous because you could flip a bead, especially with a high, like a really heavy truck like this. But it's still like, I'm not going to say it's like a little Tacoma floating across the snow, but you can get an impressive amount of flotation. You can also get extremely stuck, which I found a few times, but it can get you into places that you couldn't otherwise. I also bought a full set of off-road chains that really help with traction in that deep snow.
Mhm.
If you're not careful with them, you can dig a hole really quick and have the frame sitting on the top of the snow and the wheels just spinning. But if you use them well, they can really get you into some amazing places.
And you do have the Carli under frame spare tire carrier.
That thing is amazing. So that's one of the mods that I'm so glad you guys did, because I forget what the price point is on this.
This was the first in
Yeah.
existence. It's quite expensive. I don't know if it's on sale still right now, but it was almost $2,000 for that hitch carrier.
Yeah. And if I was building this myself, I'm not sure I would have spent that money. To be perfectly honest, I would have looked at it and said, like, do I really want to spend that much money on a hitch carrier? But being able to hold a full size 37-inch tire there without putting a bumper or a swing out on the back of the truck is really fantastic. And I'm so glad that it has that feature actually. And I pretty strongly recommend it to anyone else. I see a lot of trucks with the tire out here, but if you're using a truck a lot, you're going in and out of the tailgate all the time. And if you have a swing out, that's got to be a pretty big hassle, especially like these tires are not light. And
Mhm.
even if they're on a good swing out, it's going to take a lot of work to get them out of the way.
Yeah. And basically what that hitch carrier is, it's a little bit wider. So Carli actually modified it from stock. So you can come at it at 37. It's a little bit deeper and also really heavy duty, right? So it kind of ties in that rear end, and you could still tow the maximum capacity of this truck.
Yep.
So you can still bring a trailer. So
Yep.
with you. All right, can you show me a little bit inside, and then we can talk about powertrain?
Sure. Yep. So I built this kind of cabinet and bedside system out of 80/20. This is just like extruded aluminum. So these are three cabinet drawers that are 48 inches deep. So let me just set the laptop down momentarily. So I've kept my entire kitchen to one drawer. So I have the other two drawers for hunting and fishing stuff as I need it. It's a bit of a mess, but that's just kind of how I operate. But having that kind of scrunched over to the side gives me the ability to have just a lot more extra flexible space. So this could be full of duck decoys, dog kennels. I have three bird dogs. It's just really nice to have this much flexible space. And it would be hard for me to function with some of the other builds where there's a lot of like kind of kitchen and stuff like that really takes up bed space. I'll hop up inside and show you the inside here.
Sweet.
All right, and I hope the leaf blower of the neighbors isn't causing too much audio.
Yeah, I cannot hear it, so that's pretty good.
So again, I'm 6'1". I'm standing on my bed slide, and there's quite a bit of room here. I can just barely sit on the bed as long as my head pops up in the roof or in the vent. So it's a little bit tight from there, but I think it's like a pretty good size overall. The top is tall enough that I keep all my bedding in place, which I think is huge for convenience. You're not like moving pillows and sleeping bags around. So that helps with the speed. Up here at the front, which is an unusual location, I have an angle fridge that I've been really happy with. I usually access it. I'm reaching in from the side door. And what else? Oh, I have a Scepter water jug here tucked in the corner, and I have a 12-volt water pump that I use. And so I have an outlet here at the back of the truck that I can use for drinking water, spraying things down, or whatever. And then I was inflating and deflating my tires so often that I ended up building in a four tire inflation deflation system. So around each corner of the truck, I have quick connect chucks, and I have 4 short lengths of hose that go down to each tire. So I have 2 in the under the hood, and then 2 right here. And this is basically my control panel. So I can set all 4 tires to the same pressure. Under the fridge, I have one of the ARB dual piston air compressors. And so I can air this whole thing up from quite low in like 7 or 8 minutes, with very little kind of like fussing or checking the tire pressure 20 times over on 4 different tires independently.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because a 37-inch tall tire, I've been there. With a little compressor, you can be there for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Tinkering with the tire, and that's really cool.
And what takes a lot of time is like checking the pressure.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, okay, 2 more PSI, and then trying to match both sides and stuff like that. You only have to do that kind of one set of times, because you can watch all 4 tires at the same. You can still connect the front and rear tires independently if you have like more weight in the back and you want to add more PSI to the back or whatever. But it makes everything so much faster.
So now let's talk about Powertrain. Can you take me maybe to the driver area or
Sure.
to the hood area maybe? So tell me about the engine and transmission.
So until recently, to foreshadow a little bit, I have been super happy with this powertrain. It's very low maintenance. It's got a lot of power. So that's the Godzilla engine there.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if you can see it. And the 10-speed has been great. It's flexibility on the highway to, this truck rolls down the highway at 80 miles an hour very comfortably, and being able to do that in 10th gear and like very low RPM to be able to save. This is not like a fuel economy car, but like you to be somewhat fuel efficient, it's really helpful. But then still to have the low gearing on the bottom end for towing. I've had this trailer. It's a tandem trailer that I've had at I think the max is 7,000 pounds, and I've had that fully maxed out. I towed it from Seattle to Texas and back. I've also towed it down to San Diego and back. This thing tows just fine. If I was doing a lot of heavy hauling, I'd still probably want a diesel. But if you're in my position where you don't really need a diesel, so far this has been a great powertrain.
Okay.
But
I sense a but coming.
Yes. So so we're here towards the end of January. In early December, I was driving out of Seattle in somewhat heavy traffic. I was in the right-hand lane. I was doing maybe like 50 or 55 miles an hour, and there was an opening in the fast lane. And so I was pulling out. It's, there's heavy traffic, so you don't have all day to get out there and get up to speed at 65 miles an hour or whatever. And so I pull out and I step on the gas a little bit, and nothing happened. I was still doing 50 or 55 miles an hour. The engine didn't rev. It's like I didn't change any of the inputs. And it seemed like it was doing this for a long time, but in reality, it was probably a second and a half. But it was long enough that you're like, oh, like all of a sudden there's traffic bearing down on you, and you're like, so that happened, and it didn't repeat itself for a little bit. Through December, I was hunting like 4 days a week. So I wasn't like going to investigate it right away. I was fairly busy at the time, and but it started kind of doing it more and more. And instead of like a second and a half, it was like 3 or 4 seconds. And so in kind of mid-December, I called around to a few dealerships, and the soonest they could get me in was mid-January. We had a bunch of holiday stuff, and I wasn't sure what my schedule was, and it wasn't that serious at that point. So I was like, I kind of put it off. And then in the last few weeks, it's gotten much worse, to the point where I don't think it's safe to drive in regular drive mode. When you're merging onto the highway or going up a hill on the highway, or pulling out to pass, uh, randomly, sometimes, like I'll look down, it going at like 50 or 50 miles an hour. This truck with the fast rear end and 37-inch tires should never be in 10th gear at that speed. And previously wasn't. But like the same thing will happen where I'll pull out, I'll step in the gas and nothing happens. And now I've been like I'm halfway expecting it every time I do that. And so I've been counting. And the other day it took me 7 full, like 1,000, 1,000. That's a long time when you're
Yeah,
trying to like get into traffic. And then depending on how far you put your foot down on the gas, it'll really drop into a gear. One time it went from 10th to 3rd, which is a gear change that it should probably never do.
okay.
And so anyways, it does, for a while as it was doing this, it was still shifting fine. But lately I've been driving it in M mode and just, counting up and down through the gears.
So
But
you're basically now shifting it kind of manually
right,
using the button.
because initially I thought, based on the symptoms, I thought it felt like more of a software issue,
Mhm.
really, to be honest. I thought like maybe something's funky and it's just making bad decisions about when to shift or something like that. Um, but as I've been using it in manual mode, it's now like shifting pretty harsh as well. And going from park to reverse, or just into park, or sorry, just into drive, there's like a clunk. um and then going, from third to fourth or whatever, it's a much harsher shift than it used to. And previous to this issue, when you'd put it in drive and you would accelerate reasonably fast from 0 to highway speed, you wouldn't even notice when it shifted gears. Like it's
Yeah,
just like flawless, really. And now, as I'm manually shifting through, you really notice each gear.
I gotcha. So you're having some transmission issues,
Yeah.
but not engine issues. You haven't noticed the engine itself
The
having
engine has been
issues.
great. Yeah.
Okay.
No issues on that. I've been changing all my own oil. It's pretty easy. One of the advantages versus the diesel trucks now, like the fuel filters and all of that extra work that you have to do. With this being lifted, I don't have to jack it up or do anything like that. I can just roll under it, drain the oil, and it's a pretty quick procedure. But yeah, the engine has been great. I have an appointment at Ford for February 8th, and so I'll know more then. As time has gone by, I'm trying not to drive this truck very much at all, but there's a few things that I have to do now and then. But as time has gone by, I'm becoming more and more worried. I went from thinking, oh, maybe there's a software update that they can apply, to now I'm like, maybe they'll be pulling the whole transmission. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I guess we can do another update after you figure this out,
Yeah.
when you go in for the next service. So maybe this is to be continued. I am bummed. I mean, you have almost what, 50,000 miles, maybe a little bit less, like you said, 48,000 miles.
Yep.
Definitely, this heavy duty transmission should be flawless for a long time.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens. But it sounds like until this issue, you've really been kind of enjoying this truck.
Yeah, I've been very, very happy with it. Like just the capability and capacity that it has to tow, a 7,000-pound trailer easily across the country, and then also to go off road and cruise in, pretty lumpy off road stuff at 40, 45 miles an hour, and to do it comfortably. And to go in places, I'm routinely in places where I run into guys in Jeeps with 44-inch tires and stuff like that, and they look at me and they're like, "You're here in a F-250?" Like, yeah.
That happened to me too. Because we had a camper also on top of this.
Mhm.
We had a four-wheel camper set up on this truck when we had it. And we did a Tin Cup Trail in Colorado, which is a pretty high altitude, above tree line
Mhm.
trail. You probably saw that video.
Yep.
And this truck is large, right?
Yeah.
So some of the tight turns, you have to be very precise. And
Mhm.
a few people were just jaw dropping at the summit of that mountain, because they're like, we took our Razor and Can-Ams up here, and you brought this giant truck up here. And I said, yeah, I did. I did bring it. So, so I'm glad you kind of using that. I really, I'm bummed out about the transmission, of course. But I really appreciate your update. I think this is really valuable so people can see what happens to these trucks over long term, longer term, because I get so many emails like, Andre, why don't you keep it for 100,000 miles?
Right.
And I'm like, I wish I could, but I also want to test multiple trucks, right?
Right. Yeah.
So this is very valuable. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm happy to provide the update. I know your videos were so helpful for me as well. Picking out this car, picking out previous vehicles of ours, and so I'm just happy to kind of contribute back so folks can see what happened with this particular build.
Awesome. Well, how about this? Get back to me on the update
Sure.
when you have a dealership update, and I want to learn more about this.
Sounds great.
All right, Warren, thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Take care.